My name is Steve Hoffman. Very happy to see you all virtually this morning. And we're very excited with our guest today. Welcome to Compass Coffee Talk, presented by Compass Natural. We are an agency that connects media and markets in natural and organic products. And we're really thrilled also to help with entrepreneurs telling their stories to our industry, help really grow our business. As we were talking a little earlier, we're a collaborative industry and marketplace, and this is to help us all grow our businesses together. And we're sponsored by Allegro Coffee for Compass Coffee Talk, so I want to thank them always. And we're going to select a special guest at the end to receive a free bag of Allegro. And also, Miyoko, you'll be getting one of those yourself. It's just a small thank you from us. So I want to introduce Miyoko Schinner, the founder and CEO of Miyoko's Creamery. Right now, one of the leading plant-based food companies out there, doing some incredible work with product innovation, with branding, with spreading the plant-based message, which is a wave that's growing. And I think that is a very good thing for the planet, for people, for communities. And we'd like to welcome Miyoko Schinner. I also would like to welcome my co-host, Bill Capsalis, who works with us at Compass Natural. And we were talking a little bit, former president of Naturally Boulder, cut his teeth in the consumer brands markets with Kinko's, but since then has brought that expertise to working with natural product companies over the past 20 plus years. And I don't want to give away our age too much, Bill.
Okay.
But Miyoko and Bill, welcome, and thank you everybody for joining us today.
Thanks,
Thank
Steve.
you.
Welcome, Miyoko. Good to see you. I'm glad to have you here.
You know, first thing I'd like to ask is just, we're all seeing the photographs out there of the burnt orange skies over California, and it's worrisome. And everybody across the country is thinking about California and Oregon and Washington and the West. Well, Miyoko, how are you? How's your family, your staff, your company? How's your animals holding up in all of this?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for asking, Steve and Bill. It is definitely feeling a little apocalyptic. It's scary when you get up in the morning and at 9 o'clock, you go outside and it still feels like, it's like 6 a.m. It's dark, and it was overcast all day yesterday with a pink sky. It was dark all day. It was very, very scary. We ourselves at Miyoko's and my home have been spared so far. We're just suffering from the ash from and the smoke from nearby fires. There's one not too far from my house at Reyes National Seashore. That's very, very scary. We have definitely, we have a farmed animal sanctuary that some of you know about. And so we have about 150 residents there, largely birds, but also big animals like cows and goats and pigs.
Wow.
And we've had to really sort of double down on what's the evacuation scenario, if a fire should come to, actually threaten us directly. Miyoko's facility in Petaluma has been spared every single year. Petaluma seems to be fairly lucky. We seem to be out of the line of fire. And so we're knocking on wood that we stay that way. But there is a huge concern for so many people. We've had people, not this year, but in the past, have to evacuate from their homes, employees. In the past, we've actually put people up at our house, and other employees have put up other employees at their houses temporarily. So, this is just the beginning. It's 20 times worse than it was last year, apparently. Something like 2.3 million acres have burned so far. It's very, very scary. And this is just the beginning. Last year, the year before that, the fire started in October.
Yeah.
It started in late August. I mean, this is just, this is the gloom and doom that is facing all of humanity. It's happening in Colorado. We've got the storms on the East Coast. I think that climate change is a reality that we have to come to terms with, and we have to, as consumers, change our lifestyle in order to start reversing this. I mean, we're not just victims. We are actually the culprits that are causing this. and we have to do something about changing our personal lives and habits.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I mean, can you talk a little bit about that lifestyle? This is a lifestyle that I think you're referring to, plant-based lifestyle, and also better protection of the soil and the earth and regenerative. Is there anything you would like to share about that, and how you have approached the production of your own products and your view on that?
Sure, that's a lengthy topic, but I'll just give a really quick example. In a local newspaper, I live out in West Marin, out in the country, surrounded by animal agriculture. And an article came out recently talking about how in Marin County, they found that the leading cause of climate change, of greenhouse gas emissions, is agriculture. And most of that agriculture is animal-based. It's dairies and cattle ranches. And so the state is actually going to spend millions of dollars. They have an initiative to go carbon-free. And we're going to spend millions of taxpayer dollars doing carbon sequestration out on these ranches. And the question entered my mind, well, why are we spending millions of dollars cleaning up a mess that if we just didn't create it, we wouldn't have to clean up? So if we just started from a point where we didn't create those methane emissions, we wouldn't have to clean up those methane emissions. And so we have to rethink, how do we solve the problem fundamentally? And it's not by, cleaning up the oil spill after it's happened. It's by not producing the oil to begin with. It's by not producing animals for food when they're no longer required. Regenerative is a huge component of it, but it doesn't necessarily have to involve animals. There is a segment of the population that believes that regenerative agriculture is the key, and it absolutely is. But they believe that you have to have cows in order to regenerate the soil. And we have to remember that in 2/3 of the world, there were no cows. And there weren't greenhouse gas emissions that were from agriculture that were destroying the planet. There were natural ruminants. There were natural animals that helped regenerate the soil. And if we just go back to that, there is a study that was done. It's the largest agricultural study in the world that was ever done, of 40,000 farms over something like 200 countries, done by Oxford University. Led by a scientist named Joseph Poore. And it showed that the worst form of of growing crops was still better than the best form of animal agriculture. And the lead scientist in this study did not do this study to prove that plant-based was great. In fact, he wasn't even vegan when he started it. He studied, it was just a sheer agricultural study. And by the end, he could no longer eat meat, and he is an avid vegan now, because there is absolutely no environmental benefit to having animals on the land. And this study showed that if there were a global shift towards a plant-based diet, we could actually reduce global farmland by over 60%. Right now, 50% of the U.S. land, arable U.S. land mass is actually used for animal agriculture. It's either for grazing or for growing crops to support the industry. 50% of all land mass in the United States. It is huge. And we're wondering, how are we going to feed 9 to 10 billion people in the world? What are we going to do? I mean, how are we going to grow enough crops? Well, it turns out if we just eliminated animal products, we'd have, we could, just in the United States, we could feed something like 300 million more people just by eliminating animal products. And that 60% of land mass that we would save could be regenerated into wildlands that would create, that would support wildlife and regenerate that. Right now, 96% of all mammals on this planet are either humans or livestock. Only 4% is wildlife. And we are exterminating, we are killing that wildlife at an alarming rate. We need to restore the wildlife habitats to support these species, and instead we're destroying them.
Yeah, that was just in the news today that wild animals are going, their populations are declining at precipitous rates right now. Again, due to human activity and the loss of their wild lands. I actually read a book a long time ago with the idea of turning a kind of a North American preserve for wildlife. It always just stuck in my mind, even though it was fiction, because we see it in Colorado as well, really starting to reduce the corridors for wildlife.
Yes.
The one thing I do want to mention about regeneration, because we are supportive of regenerative agriculture, there is a movie launching next week or on the 22nd in 2 weeks on Netflix called Kiss the Ground. I know they've been working on it for 5 years. Woody Harrelson is going to be narrating it, and we can all watch it, anybody who's a subscriber of Netflix. Learn more about regenerative agriculture. This is really the first move of it getting out into the mainstream. My concern, Miyoko, is I am totally in favor of plant-based, but there seems to me to be some schools of plant-based. There's the high-tech, GMO is okay, and then more again in line with rebuilding the soil and sequestering carbon would be more organic practices, which very pleased to see the certified organic seal on your products. I'm a core organic consumer, 2-time cancer survivor. I think it's why I look so good at 64 is organic food. So that's my concern with plant-based. Would you respond to that in any way?
Sure, absolutely. And there are many, many schools of thought. I, for one, am a strong proponent of organic agriculture. I don't think there's any need for pesticides. We got by for thousands of years without it. Why do we need it now? And of course, these modern agricultural practices were adopted in order to supposedly feed the planet. But it turns out we don't really need to do all of that. And I'm going to go back to, just the amount of land and resources needed to feed animals. I mean, why do we have soy and corn? Why do we have these huge monocrops? And everyone's against that. And I understand, soy and corn are destroying the planet. They're the most it's the biggest GMO crop out there. They're taking up large swaths of land. But we have to remember that 80 to 90% of soy and corn grown go to feed livestock. They're not for human consumption. So we're growing these crops and using up these huge tracts of land in order to support animal agriculture. So that's part of the problem. I mean, it's not that soy is bad. It's not that corn is bad. I mean, these are plants that have been used in, I guess, indigenous populations throughout most of the world for thousands of years without impact to the land. So soy itself isn't bad, neither is corn. But we have to do it, we have to actually eat those crops ourselves, not feed them to animals. And then we don't need to grow so much of it. And they can grow in conjunction, as corn used to grow next to squash, next to beans. So it's not monocrops. I mean, that is the right way to grow corn. This is how they did it in Latin America, which is why you have the so-called three sisters. This is the ancient wisdom that we have to borrow from and go back to. Your question about plant-based, it's just like, I think we can ask the same question about animal agriculture. Is all, there are proponents of, well, meat is good, but is all meat good? Is processed meat good? How about processed foods? Is junk food good? What about fried chicken, Kentucky Fried Chicken or a McDonald's? Are those foods good? So we can ask the same questions of plant-based. I think the question really is processed food good or whole foods good? And I think we all agree that really what we need to do is get back to eating organic whole foods. We need unprocessed diet. And I agree. I mean, there's a lot of vegan junk food out there. I think it's, I used to have another company back in the day called Now and Zen. This is like 20 years ago. And our motto was indulgence is good for you, but only now and Zen. And this is, I think there's nothing wrong with having, a vegan candy bar once in a while.
Was that a pudding company, Now and Zen?
No, we actually had, we made meat alternatives back in the day. We had a product called the Unturkey, which was the second leading turkey alternative in the country back in the 90s. And we had a leading whip topping called Hip Whip. It was the first.
I remember that too.
Yeah. So anyway.
That's really funny. You know, Miyoko, this might be a good time to turn to this topic of the butter decision. And we have a Cliff Waldick who chimed in on the Q&A. He says, Miyoko, does the California butter decision bode well for the rest of the country? Or are there 49 other butter battles to be fought? You want to talk about the decision a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Maybe give a little background as well of what we're talking about here.
Sure. I also want to give a shout out to Cliff Waldick. Hi, Cliff. I've known Cliff since high school. And then he recently went vegan and came to a conference where I was and told me that. Anyway.
All right, Cliff.
Way to go, Cliff.
He was also the mayor of Mill Valley for a while.
Wow.
Anyway, so we recently, I'll just give the background. Last December, the state of California, the Department of Food and Agriculture sent us a letter telling us that we couldn't use the word butter anymore because it was owned by, butter had to come from cows. We also couldn't use the word cruelty. We couldn't use the phrase cruelty free. And we had to remove all images of animals from our website. We had a picture of a woman hugging a cow on our website because the purpose was to show that animals like cows weren't just commodities or milk machines, but they were actual animals that were capable of love and capable of being loved. We wanted to turn around consumer perception around what's considered livestock. Well, anyway, instead of backing down like so many other plant-based companies have done, and I can tell you that other plant-based dairy companies in the state of California have gotten similar letters and they all backed down. We decided we didn't want to do that. We felt that our First Amendment rights were being violated. So we aligned with the Animal Legal Defense Fund, ALDF, that represented us in this lawsuit. And we filed a First Amendment violation lawsuit against the CDFA. Just a couple of weeks ago, a judge for the U.S. District Court, Northern California District, ruled in our favor in a motion for preliminary injunction that we were indeed able to use the word butter, modified by terms such as vegan or cashew milk or plant-based, because it left no room for confusion in the mind of the consumer. He also ruled that we can use the terms like cruelty-free and lactose-free. And the state of California backed down and rescinded their position on our ability to post animals on our website. So we're now celebrating that and posting pictures of people hugging cows everywhere. So we think it's a landmark decision that we believe bodes well for the entire plant-based industry. And, as language evolves around this industry, and language has always evolved, the language of food is evolving as well too. People, food has always evolved, and now we need to figure out how do we talk about these foods that are being invented. As milk is now, transitioned from cows to almonds to cashews to now perhaps from yeast cells from companies like Perfect Day. How do we talk about these products in a way that consumers recognize it? If we call it juice, how will they know how to use these products? We have to also consider their functionality and their application in order to remove any sort of confusion possible. So I think it was a great decision and we're very excited. Now we have to move on to not just a preliminary injunction, but a permanent one.
Okay.
And the other part of that question was, and that's interesting, is like, now does it have to be fought in 49 other states? This has been a long kind of debate, the dairy industry saying you can't use these terms such as milk or butter. So that's why, for me, I think this is a really positive step for the plant-based industry. But I think there's more work to be done to, be able to use these terms.
Absolutely, but as you realize, other judges are going to look towards any precedent that's been set. And California is a very, very strong dairy state, which is why we decided to fight it here. We actually had an opportunity to do a similar thing in Wisconsin a couple of years ago when the state of Wisconsin descended upon stores and actually started pulling our products off of shelves, saying that we couldn't they couldn't carry our product butter because it didn't, because, you know, Wisconsin has very strong butter rules about it. We chose not to fight on a legal battle there. Instead, we took a media approach, and we got a big write-up in some, I think it was, I'm blanking now, not Forbes or Washington Post, what's Bloomberg, and that spread to other publications. And Wisconsin actually started getting real complaints. So they actually took it off the shelves because they said they were getting consumer complaints. We hired an attorney. We demanded to see the complaints, and there were actually 2 complaints. One was from the dairy lobby in Wisconsin, and the other was from a magazine called Milkweed Magazine. What do you think Milkweed Magazine writes about? It's a magazine for the dairy industry. So those are the 2 consumer complaints. So after we got all this publicity, they started getting real consumer complaints from real consumers saying, we can't find Miyoko's butter, what's going on? So Wisconsin actually backed down. They said, okay, we're not gonna do anything about it. And they dropped all of their actions. We didn't think that Wisconsin was a big enough state to set a precedent. We felt that California was a very important dairy state in which to do so. And that's why we chose to take action here. And we think this will set a precedent in the 49 other states that we're gonna have to fight in.
Awesome.
Well, I think it's an excellent landmark decision. It sets a great precedent. And I also think it's funny that the dairy industry would use a plant-based name called milkweed. Actually, they should go sue them, so they say white sap weed. Hey, you're not allowed to call that milkweed.
Pretty funny.
Yeah.
Miyoko, Alexandra Perez wrote in on the Q&A. She wants to know if you have a mission or initiative that we can join or support. I'm assuming maybe the animal sanctuary would be something related to that, or are there other things that you're doing that we should know about? Sure.
This is something that would benefit wild animals. We were talking earlier about the decimation of wildlife because of loss of habitat, largely due to animal agriculture. That is the leading cause of wildlife destruction. You know, we see that happening in the Amazon, the burning of the Amazon primarily to grow crops for livestock or to create grazing land. We actually have a very, very similar thing going on right now in my backyard of Point Reyes National Seashore, which is a public park. It's a public park that was purchased, all this land was purchased about 60 years ago from a number of ranching families that had land out there. And then the land was leased back to these ranching families. The leases expired, and the ranchers do not want to leave. This is where the there is a big issue out there because the waters off of Point Reyes National Seashore are among the 10 most polluted in California. And this has to do with feces contamination running off of Point Reyes National Seashore. But what's happening right now is that we have an indigenous species called tule elk. There used to be thousands and thousands of tule elk in California. We have, they were exterminated to the point of almost extinction, and then they were brought back. And we have about 5,000 tule elk left in California. That's about it. We have a herd, several herds in Point Reyes National Seashore. And right now we have a small herd of about 423 or so that are now enclosed in an area that's enclosed by fencing, ranch fencing. And because of the droughts and the fires, they have no access to water. All of the watering holes have dried up, and they're beginning to die. The story has been, it's been in the LA Times and Sacramento Bee and other things. The National Parks refuses to take down an 8-foot fence that they erected to prevent the tule elk from grazing on the lands that the ranchers occupy, saying that the grass is for the cows, the tule elk can't have access. So there's 5,600 cattle, heads of cattle on Point Reyes National Seashore. There's about 600 elk. And apparently the 600 elk are threatening the cattle. So right now, there is an opportunity. There is a chance that we're going to lose the elk. Half the herd died in the drought about 3 or 4 years ago, and we could see a repeat of that. So, what people can do is write to their senators, their congressmen, let them know about the situation, that, we need to support wildlife. If ranching does need to continue, I think there's a way for them to cohabitat. But we need to support wildlife. I mean, we're facing a world where that's burning. We're facing a world that's threatened by hurricanes and natural disasters. And we're going to see more and more wildlife habitat destruction. This is a very serious situation, and we need to figure out ways to support wildlife. Without them, we destroy ecosystems, and who knows how. I mean, this planet belongs to all, including it's not just for humans. We're not trying to prevent climate change so we can sustain human life. We need to sustain it for all life.
Well said.
Thank you very much. And there is some information from the Sierra Club on the Tule elk and what's going on in Point Reyes. So best way people can get involved is to write to their legislators and read up a little bit more on this, because you just educated me about it. Also, I want to let people know about your, and I just like saying it, Rancho con Pasión.
Yes.
How did you come up with that name? Do you have some ties to the Latin American or the Spanish community at all?
Well, actually, so I live in a little town called Nicasio, and that's actually a Native American name. It was a Native American chief. But it's a very small town, population of 900, and there's a little downtown, and there's only one establishment there, and it's called Rancho Nicasio. So when we started the sanctuary 5 years ago, my husband presented me with a Christmas present. It was a sign that said Rancho con Pasión.
Oh.
And that's how the name started. But we're a 501c3 nonprofit farmed animal sanctuary. Our website is ranchocompasion.org. It's basically spelled like Rancho Compassion, but only one S.
One S.
One S, that's the key. And you can find out about who lives there, all the residents, what we do. Right now, we have virtual tours you can take if you like. They're called Compassion Cameos or something like that. But, we used to do humane education, school field trips, all of that pre-COVID, and we're hoping to return to that ASAP.
Sounds great. Hey, Felicia Dawson wrote in to say, Miyoko, you are brilliant and an inspiration. I thought you should.
Thank you very much, Felicia.
Felicia is a medical doctor in Atlanta, so
yeah,
promoting healthy lifestyles. So awesome. She's a friend and a fan.
Hey, Steve, I know we only have a couple minutes left, maybe 2-3 minutes. Miyoko, do you want to riff for a minute on the future of food? What do you think is going to be happening as we go forward?
Yeah, and how can the entrepreneurs out there that are looking to you as a role model, resilience is something you brought up, Bill. So how can these companies thrive in this time?
Yeah, absolutely. Resilience is key. I mean, if people think I'm an overnight success. I'm an overnight success, 30 years in the making. I've had a lot of other businesses, a lot of failures, and it's being in the right place at the right time. That's a lot of it, and having the right idea and not giving up. Business really is largely about learning from your mistakes, building on them, surrounding yourselves with good people, all the things that people read about. And also believing in your mission, not forgetting why you started something and not being afraid to speak about it. I am not afraid to speak about animal rights. I know I've offended some people about it, but at the same time, it resonates. It depends on how you tell your story. It can help open the eyes of a lot of people. I do believe the future is plant-based because I think the planet requires it, the animals require it, and even humans require it. That's a whole long topic. We could go on forever if you get me going there, and I know we're almost out of time, but I really do believe that this is the new, this isn't a trend, this is a requirement. This is the way it's going to be because the sheer economics of it, of really feeding 9 to 10 billion people will automatically take animals out of the equation. It just isn't sustainable. And animals will become more and more sort of a niche product for those who can afford it. It's not going to be a solution for the masses.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Annie O'Leary says, this has been so great. Thank you for all you do, Miyoko. Please keep up the great work. Tina Atwell asks, what are your plans for expansion for Miyoko's in other food markets? So a little bit of your future plans.
Sure. Well, we just expanded our facility. We just took on 19,000 square feet. People next door moved out. So we just expanded our R&D space and our offices, and we're planning to double, triple our R&D team over the next year to really embark on all kinds of product development that we're very excited about, to take over really much, much more of the dairy category. We're now in Canada. We're in talks about expanding to Asia as well. Hopefully over the next couple of years, we'll be able to get into Europe.
Awesome.
That's really wonderful. Miyoko, thank you so much. You know, we plan these things to be a nice little half-hour chat over a cup of coffee. It's been really a wonderful experience with you. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you as well for sending us some samples. I want everybody to do this today. Any closing comments from anybody? We're at 10:01. We're running over just a little bit, but I think we're getting toward the end.
I'll just say thanks, Miyoko. Just totally appreciate what you're doing, and getting to know you today was just awesome. And I wish we had an hour, but again, like Steve said, we like to keep it to a half hour. People are busy and they get zoomed out. So
absolutely.
Thank you for rolling with our questions and stuff. You're awesome.
Thank you, Bill and Steve.
We'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everybody.
All right.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.